All right, friends, we are back, and you probably guessed it from yesterday. We are talking about bees today. So I'm just going to go ahead, get started. We're talking about social insects today. So, social insects, remember, are insects that live together rather than just live on their own. So, I'm going to get started because this one is a little bit long. So, like you usually do, find a nice spot where you can focus and listen. Okay. Buzz, buzz. Oh, you startled me. I am so busy that I nearly forgot where I was. I am a honey bee, and I am delighted to be here to tell you a little bit about my everyday world. Honeybees are quite social. Humans are social too, which means that they live together in communities or groups instead of living alone. Social insects live in communities too. Most insects are solitary, living alone their entire lives. They are alone when they hatch from their eggs, they search for food alone, and they find their own shelter. There are thousands of different kinds of bees on this planet, and most of them live solitary lives. But honeybees are different. We live together in organized communities and depend upon one another to live, solving problems as a team. We gather and share food, we build nests together, cooperate or work together to raise our young and help protect one another from enemies. So instead of living alone, they live in groups. Honeybee communities are called colonies. Our colonies are made up of 20,000 or more bees. We like to make our nest or beehives in dark places. That's why you often see pictures of us buzzing around in the trunks of hollow trees. People use beehive boxes to raise honeybees for honey. Perhaps you've seen these boxes in a field, orchard, or backyard. Here are the honeybee boxes. Okay? And that's the hollow tree where they like to live where it's dark. Wherever we nest, we build honeycombs. This amazing structure of layered cells is made from waxy substance that we produce in our abdomens. Can you spot a pattern among the cells in the honeycomb? They are all six-sided. We know a six-sided shape is called a hexagon, right? What purpose do all these cells serve? These cells are very important to our lives. Listen carefully, and I'll tell you about how they are important to the many jobs we perform. Remember, I told you we are very social insects and very busy. There is lots of work to be done, and each bee in the colony has its own job to do. Every honeybee colony has a mother called the queen bee. The bee is always the largest bee in the hive, and she has only one job to do. She must lay eggs, lots and lots of eggs. She must produce more queens for other hives and make sure there are enough worker bees to do the work in her own hive. The queen bee flies from the nest to mate with male bees called drones. Once a drone has mated with the queen bee, it has done its job and it dies. Drones cannot sting because they don't have stingers. When the queen returns, she lays her eggs, sometimes more than 1,000 eggs a day. Where do you think the queen bee lays all these eggs? She returns to the comb to lay them in their cells. So the comb refers to the structure in which bees live. The queen then pushes tiny eggs no bigger than a pinhead from her abdomen into the waxy cells of the honeycomb, one egg in each cell. In just a few days, the eggs hatch. The larvae get fed pollen, and one by one, the hive's female worker get fed pollen by one of the hive's female worker bees. And we know what pollen is, right? The larvae grow and eventually spin silky cocoons. Worker bees quickly seal over the small waxy cells of the honeycomb, protecting the developing pupa inside each cocoon. Does this process sound familiar? It should. These bees are undergoing a change. Remember, that change is called metamorphosis. When they emerge from their cocoons, they will chew their way out of the cells, emerging as a full-grown adult. Most of the new adults are female worker bees. They only live for a few months and they spend their whole lives working hard to keep the hive running well. They keep the hive clean. They serve as nurse bees, tending to the larvae. They make new cells and repair old ones. They store nectar and pollen that others bring back to the hive. After several weeks of working within the hive, these hardworking females go outside to serve as guards, protecting the hive from its enemies and bees from other hives. Each hive has its own special chemical scent or smell, so it's easy to tell who doesn't belong in the hive. That's so interesting. Near the end of their life, a worker bee becomes a forager bee, collecting sweet juice from flowers. This juice or nectar is used to make honey. Foraging worker bees have keen or really good senses of smell and sight and very good memories. They may visit thousands of flowers each day to find the best nectar. And that's what we learned about pollination. When a bee discovers a particularly good source of nectar, it returns to the hive to share its information with the other foragers or other bees that go around looking for things. First, it lets the other foragers smell the pollen so that they can identify the type of flower. Then it performs a complicated, special waggle dance. As it circles in a pattern like a figure eight, it wags its abdomen. So it's figure eight, so it goes like this, wags its abdomen, and then goes back around. The bee's repeated movements, circling and waggling its abdomen, tell the others exactly how far away and in which direction from the sun the flowers can be located. A bee that thinks she has found a really good flower patch does a waggle dance with lots of energy. And so this is really helpful because the bees come back to its hive and tell other bees to come help and get all of this nectar and bring it back to the hive so that they can eat. Where do you suppose the bees put their nectar when they return to the hive? They make the nectar into honey and store it into honey cells, the cells that are not being used for developing bees. The honey is an important food source for the bees. While moving from flower to flower, worker bees rub up against a yellow powder called pollen. Honey bees will pack the pollen into baskets of hairs on their hind legs. Remember that, bumblebees? But this pollen is important for another reason. Plants need pollen from other plants in order to make new seeds. This is called pollination. Honey bees are important because they carry the pollen between the flowers of the same species or kind. Remember how important that is? We learned about this. The pollen sticks to their hairy legs. That's why it's a really good feature. I would like to introduce you to a relative of mine. This is a paper wasp over here. Look closely at its body next to mine. What do we have in common? We each have a head, we each have a thorax with 6 legs, an abdomen, and an exoskeleton and wings. In this particular wasp, the paper wasp is a social insect just like me. Some wasps are solitary, but the black and gold ones nearly live in societies, right? Groups of people. Like honeybees, wasps live in large groups. What are these groups called? Yes, wasps live in colonies. Each colony has a leader, a female wasp who is bigger than all the other wasps and who spends most of their time laying eggs. Sound familiar? What do you think she's called? She's called the queen, just like the queen bee. There's a queen wasp. Like honeybees, wasps build nests. They build them in many different places, usually in hidden, difficult-to-see places that are protected from rain and bad weather, such as under the eaves of houses or in protected areas on trees. So that just means like a protected area. Wasp nests have a very different look from beehives on the outside, but their paper-like structure are similar to ours on the inside. So on the outside, they're called paper wasps because it looks like their hive is made out of paper, but the structures are the same. So see how some of these are closed off? In those areas, that's where new bees or wasps are being grown. We'll take a look at how paper wasps build their nests. The process begins with the bee. She finds plant fibers, dried grasses, old boards, fence posts, and pulls them apart with her strong jaws. She softens the splintery pieces with saliva inside her mouth and chews them into a paste that looks and feels a lot like paper. She then sticks a dab of this paste to whatever surface she has chosen for her nest. The queen adds a tough stem to support the whole nest and begins attaching cone-like chambers to it. These clusters of 6-sided chambers open downward to keep the rain out. So if you can see, there's a little bit of a slope, so the rain comes out and down instead of going in. So this all happens Bees and wasps are so small, but look at all these things that they're able to build. As the queen bee forms each chamber, she deposits an egg in each one. The eggs develop into larvae. The queen wasp takes care of the first larva herself. She leaves the nest to find food, capturing and chewing other insects to mush to feed her young. About 2 weeks after hatching, the larva enters the pupa stage, spinning cocoons inside each cell and covering the cells with silk. So that's this picture. They cover the cells with silk so that the pupa can keep growing. These sealed cells break open a few times a week. Oh, here's a better picture. Break open a few weeks later, and out come adult wasps with long legs, strong wings, and large eyes. Most of these newly hatched wasps are female workers who begin to take over the queen's work right away. They hunt for food and feed for the larvae, clean and repair the cells, and guard the nest. Others fan the nest with beating wings, and some even spread water over the combs to keep their nest cool. While the workers enlarge the nest for more and more wasps, the queen goes back to laying eggs. Okay, this is the last one. Thank you for staying with me. By summer's end, many of the workers have died. There are often 250 or more cells inside a wasp's papery nest. The wasps that do emerge at the end of the summer are no longer female worker wasps. Instead, they are the new queens and males. The new queens find shelter in protected places, in attic walls, inside logs, under bushes, where they hibernate all winter. I didn't know that. When the spring comes and new queens come out from hiding, they begin building their nests for new colonies and wasps. All wasps abandon their nests in the fall, using them for one season only. When fall comes and the leaves drop from the trees, look up and see if you can spot one of their papery apartment houses, dangling from underneath the roof of a partially hidden behind a wall. Next time, you'll find out about how other social insects build their nests. Until then, be thinking about who they might be. Okay, so the next story is going to be learning more about how they build their houses, which I think is so fascinating, okay? So go ahead on Seesaw. There's an activity for you. And good luck, okay?